So what's your podcast about?
Superheroes.
It's a little geeky, but I think you guys are gonna like it.
Try not to be too geeky.
No, I can't promise that.
Should we begin?
It's a bird. It's a plane. It's the Geek and You Shall Find podcast. And now, your hosts, Kelsey Dickerson, Brad Fay, Kate Fay, and Noah Berlin.
Hold on to your butts.
Welcome to the Geek and You Shall Find podcast. My name is Noah. I am your host for the day. We are here with the face of Superhero Faces, Kelsey Lee D, the founder and director of the Geek and You Shall Find documentary, Brad G. Fay, and the mother of dragons and adorable babies, Kate, and a guest starring role, I suppose, by Princess Parker, who is back for her second podcast in a row. But we are so happy. We're excited to talk about episode 3 of House of the Dragon with you. We all just watched it last night, and we've had our chance to collect our thoughts, and we want to break it all down with you. So first off, though, we were all looking last week for a change in the opening credits based on what happened in the premiere. That didn't happen, but did you guys notice that they changed it? They add some things in the opening credits this time.
Some new tapestries.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy to see the dead baby getting beheaded on tapestry form.
I thought it was kind of weird that they included the rat catchers, because that just seemed like such a small event compared to all the other events that they put on there.
I totally agree with you. I was surprised to see the rat catchers in there, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, rat catchers hang, and that was the final shot of that. But I thought it was cool that they added to it, and we thought maybe last week when they didn't add any extra like little tapestries that maybe they wouldn't do it this season, but obviously they are. So we'll see as the story keeps expanding and big things keep happening, or little things like the rat catchers. I guess we'll see if they keep adding those. But obviously this episode started with a battle, and we didn't see the battle. It was between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. People online were kind of upset that they didn't see this battle, that it happened off screen. Did you have a feeling about that?
It was just kind of like sudden, like you see that they're like, they're beefing, and then it's clear that there's some history there, and then all of a sudden you see that kid just stabbed, and I was like, oh, like he just took care of business with that kid, like, you know what I mean, in that like setting. So I thought they just like duked it out there, but then when it pans to the wide shot, you're seeing all these dead bodies, and I was like, oh, okay, I would think that would be like maybe an important thing, because everyone is fighting for these swords, you know what I mean, to be like under them. So I don't know, maybe it's a budget thing because there's so many dragons this year, who knows.
I really liked it. I thought it was cool that they did like, the little interaction with them, and then all of a sudden you get this like jump shot of like all these dead bodies. I thought it was really neat that they did that. And like, kind of to your point, Kelsey, I think a lot of it is just to show like, look at all these dead bodies, and like it's not really, it doesn't even really mean anything, like that we're losing all these people, and all these people are dying for these people across the sea or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny too, because those two houses, which have just been enemies forever, like literally forever, no one even knows why they started to become enemies, but that was the two that if you remember in season 1, when Rhaenyra's going around to hear from the suitors of the different houses, and that one little boy is up there trying to plead that he should be betrothed to her, and that other one's talking shit, he's the bully, and they fight, and the little kid kills the other one. Those were those same two houses. So just like they are always looking for a reason to just throw the gloves off and kill each other, I guess.
I thought was really interesting too was, they talk about that in the context of that battle and those families, but that's exactly what Rhaenys says to Rhaenyra in the very beginning of the episode. So it just goes to show that, these battles and like, these long-standing fights really just happen. And there's, like you're saying, Kate, just a lot of lives lost, and people don't even know what the fuck they're fighting for anymore.
Yeah.
Just want to just hate each other.
Yeah, that's
over people who don't even like give a shit about them. Like Aegon finds out, it's like good, like none of the high up people that they're fighting for really even give a shit about them to begin with.
Yeah, I mean they're playing just like last week. They're playing a PR war a little bit too. It's like, okay, well we'll mark this. Their leader lost, so we'll say, or their leader died. We'll say that it's a win for us. Yeah. Well, that is a perfect segue. Let's get into tonight's episode breakdown, where we'll go briefly through the episode and talk about the important things that happen. So this episode opens in the crucially important Riverlands, where the centuries-long rivalry that we just talked about between the Blackwoods and the Brackens come to a head. The gruesome Battle of the Burning Mill, which is what they called it, marks the first major clash in the Dance of the Dragons, and both houses sustain massive casualties. While burying Sir Eric and Sir Eric, Rhaenys urges Rhaenyra to find peace with Alicent. In King's Landing, the small council seems to lost all discipline under the leadership of Criston Cole. The new hand of the king rushes to march on the Riverlands, and Aegon makes it known that he wants to join with his dragon Sunfire. Daemon and Caraxes land at Harrenhal and claim the haunted castle with no conflict. But Daemon's going through it. He's got visions that prophesy his own death and provide us with an awesome but unexpected cameo. While on a reconnaissance mission on her dragon Moondancer, Baela sees Ser Criston out in the open, was so close to granting all of our wishes by Dracarysing all of them as they raced for the nearest tree line. And finally, in a last-ditch effort to see if war could be avoided, Rhaenyra risks it all to sneak into King's Landing and talk with Alicent. Both queens realize that the heart of their conflict was actually a misunderstanding, but also recognize that the match has been lit and it's too late to stop the war that's to come. So yeah, I have a lot to say about that final scene between Alicent and Rhaenyra, but I think that's a perfect selection for that scene of this episode. What were your thoughts, Kelsey, on seeing the two of these actresses, the two of these characters together again?
I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week and how just perfect the casting is. There's very subtle, just looks that they give each other, and their chemistry is so good. I really loved seeing them together again. And I think too, knowing the real life chemistry that they have, it really plays on screen. So I thought it was an excellent scene. But two, I think what is so incredible is each one of them realizing in their own way, Rhaenyra sitting there being like, I've been right this whole time. Like, I knew my dad said that it was me. This bitch doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. She's talking about he's talking about this thing about Aegon the Conqueror. And then you see Alicent being like literally it's almost like one of those that's the Raven flashbacks where she's seeing everything that has transpired because she misunderstood what Viserys was saying on his dying bed. But I loved it. I hope that we get to see more interactions with them. I don't think we will until probably it's going to be something deadly, but I loved that scene. And I think it really shows I think that gave Rhaenyra the confidence, I'm doing the right thing. I'm supposed to be on that throne that she's always known, and that now she's just going to go even harder because Alicent is digging her heels in.
Well, we debated at the end of last season if when Viserys said that, we knew, the viewer, we knew that this was going to be a misunderstanding. We're like, fuck, this is ridiculous. She thinks she's talking about the kid. He's obviously talking about the Conqueror. And we debated a little bit whether she wanted to install her kid as the king, and so she was just going to use any excuse to do so, but whether or not she actually believed, the prophecy or not, or she believed what he was saying. So Brad, I'll ask you, does this confirm for you that Alicent thought that she was doing the right thing this entire time up until this conversation with Rhaenyra?
Yeah, I've always thought she thinks in her mind she's doing the right thing. To me, it was really confirmed with when she brings it up to Otto for the first time last season, and he's like, yeah, okay, well now we're gonna execute XYZ. And she's like, wait, you guys already had a plan for this? The way she genuinely seems surprised by that means it wasn't something that was in the back of her mind. I think it was something that came up when Aegon, when it was first brought up, and he's like, oh, okay, I think this makes sense, and my son should be king. She's like, okay, if that's how it should. So I do believe she genuinely believed it. And even now, I just wish it would have been a little bit something more concrete. I wish Aegon would have mentioned the Song of Ice and Fire, so that when like Allison hears her say that, she's like, oh damn, she really does. There's still nothing for Allison to confirm like, oh wait, this is some story that's just been talked about. You know what I mean? And she could probably tell by like Rhaenyra's like reaction that it was genuine, but I wish it would have been a little bit more evidence. So Allison's like, oh crap, that is what he was talking about for sure.
I mean, she knew though. I think you can tell by her reaction that she was very much like, well, damn, but it is what it is, pretty much. I mean, Kate, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really cool scene because I didn't know if we were going to get to see those two actresses together. So it was super exciting to see them because, like Kelsey said, like they are just so dynamic and so awesome with each other. So that was cool. But yeah, that whole thing was just like so frustrating to watch because you're just like, oh my God, all these like children and people have died because of just this huge misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And
it
we're
was,
not even to the brunt of it yet.
yeah, yeah.
It's gonna get so much worse. Yeah.
That's the thing too, is like now Allison knows, you could see it in her face, like she knew it and she's gonna go ahead and move forward. And so now it's like all these deaths they're on a lot of different people, but they're on her.
But I think a lot of it is that she knows. I mean, when she said what she's like, you know, my father is gone from court. Kristen Cole's already on the march. Aemond. Like she's saying basically, like, I don't have power here anymore. Like my power has been stripped from me, and they're gonna make moves. It's already begun. So there's just nothing I can do, and it is what it is. And that really, really sucks. But I think she does know what she's doing now, but there's just nothing that can be done to fix it.
I mean,
And
as much as I do love those performers together, like Kelsey said, it would be kind of fitting if that was the last time we see those two performers, because wasn't that where we saw them the last time they were friends?
Yeah, I loved that's a great point. I loved the parallels between
Yeah.
that scene and the scenes from when they were children, both in the Sept and early on when Allison confronts Rhaenyra for thinking that she was doing terrible things with Daemon, and she's like, you know, please tell me you didn't do this, and she's like, and Rhaenyra's like, I didn't do it. I swear on the memory of my mother. And then in this one, Rhaenyra's like, come on, you don't actually think that Viserys changed his mind. And she's like, I swear it on the memory of my mother. And so just like there's so many parallels to them as children to the scene, which I thought made it even that much more effective.
also, Noah, what do you think about like, I mean, obviously there's been what, like probably about 20, 30 years of pent up whatever they're feeling for each other. Like, you mean they used to be best friends. Clearly there's some kind of tension between them even from afar. And, you know, each one is like, even though they're not interacting, like, you know, Rhaenyra's being like, well, Alicent would never believe this about me, and Alicent's being like, Rhaenyra would never do this, like, you know what I mean? Even though there's like these, I don't know, there's like these conflicting, I think, feelings that they have. What do you think about the way that they portrayed that in that scene? Because it's a relatively short scene. It's like having to be very muted, you know what I mean? They're not wanting to get caught doing that. Like, do you think they were able to portray that appropriately in that scene?
I do. And I think that at least while I was watching it, I felt kind of bad for both of them because you see the feelings that they've had for so long about each other and the bitterness that's there and the resentment that's there for a lot of different reasons, a lot that we talked about when we detailed the first season. And now it's just gotten so out of control and everybody else is involved too. And they realize that this conflict that was about the two of them is now not about the two of them at all, and the two of them have no power to put an end to it anymore. And I feel like this probably is the last time we see them together, and it sucks. You know, as someone that kind of roots for them to rekindle a friendship a little bit, that it ends with them just being like, just get out of here. Like, we're both fucked. Everything is fucked. We did it, but there's nothing we can do.
Yeah. It's kind of how it feels like being a citizen, being like, well, we're in this, so
Yeah.
America.
I mean, and if we break down the scene, like for this entire season, both of their small councils were clamoring for war. Like everyone's talking about, we got to unleash the dragons, we got to go burn them out, we got to do this, we got to kill anybody that's not, doesn't bend the knee to us, and all that stuff. And both queens, that they want to exercise caution. Rhaenyra specifically wants to unleash the dragons as a last resort. And so she talks to Rhaenys a lot. And Rhaenys counsels her go to talk to Alicent. It's funny that the apology letter that Alicent sent early on after the death of Luke comes back into this. She just didn't even read it. And so she finally reads and she's like, okay, maybe we could come up with some sort of understanding. And so she risks it all and sneaks into King's Landing. And it was effective, I thought, the whole, dressing up like a septon or a septa, excuse me. It wasn't one of those things that I thought it would be like, oh, this is so unrealistic. Like she has a hood on like they always do, and she's sneaking around like this would never happen. But I think that their disguise is actually, it made it so it made sense for me. But what do you think about the decision on Rhaenyra's part to do that? Like, she risked it all, because if Alicent would have yelled or brought her Kingsguard or something like that, the entire war would have been over. She, the queen, the only person that should be on the throne, is dead now, and everything is gone. Everything is gone. Whereas if it went that way and she killed Alicent, like, Alicent doesn't really matter. Alicent's not the queen on the throne. So like Rhaenyra really risked it all. What do you think about her decision to do that?
I think it goes back to like what we were talking about of like, even though there's all those years of like pent up resentment and bitterness and, horrible, horrible things have happened, at the base of it, they know each other better than anybody. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Alicent, like, even though she was sending those letters and those ravens, like, I think in her heart she knew Rhaenyra was not going to read them. And then too, Rhaenyra was like, Rhaenys was like, do you want me to send a letter on your behalf? Like, you shouldn't go there. And then she was like, that will never work. Like, because she knows, because they're very similar people. They were best friends. So you know what I mean? All their lives, like growing up. So I think it's way better than Sir Crispy's plan to censor Eric to go kill Rhaenyra. But yeah, I mean, it's risky, but I think that also goes to show the lengths that Rhaenyra does not want this to get to where we all know it's headed. She wants to do anything she can to not have dragons kill dragons and like just have all this
Yeah.
bloodshed. So I think it just really goes to show that she's trying to do the best thing, and not be hot-headed like everyone else wants her to be.
Every episode she seems to be more and more sympathetic for the viewers to see, which makes it even crazier that anyone would be Team Green. It's like, why would anyone be, when you see this person on one side that is just so obviously deserving of all of these things?
It does show like her action, like that she's sincere. Like, actions speak louder than words, like you said. That really is like, she was willing to risk it all. She could have easily been killed or captured and been tortured. Like, she really does feel this way, but at the same time, it was kind of like foolish to me, because I'm like, what did she really hope to accomplish? Like, there's no compromise. What was the best case scenario she thought might come of this? Allison to be like, oh, I'll tell my son he can't be king anymore. Like, did any small part of her really think like this would be like reconciled?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think that she thought that maybe Alicent still had more power than she actually does, and more say. And so that even if it was some sort of, I don't know, as she said, like, maybe we could come to terms, and Alicent's like, there are no terms anymore. Like, there are no terms. It was definitely foolish.
It was one
That's
of
why
the
I
first few times like Alicent was more realistic about the scenario. Usually she sounds absurd and ridiculous, but like, she was like, there are no terms. Like, what compromise is there? Like, they're both I was like, they could get married to each other, would normally be how Game of Thrones work, and be like, okay, we'll wed Aegon with Rhaenyra. But I'm like, they're both married, and like, so that's not really on the table. So I didn't know what Rhaenyra was like really hoping would come out of this.
Yeah. Hey, did you think that when Alicent realized that Rhaenyra was there and had a knife on her, that she should have yelled? Like, do you think she should have just gone along with this conversation, or really tried something which really could have ended the war right then?
Yeah. I mean, I get that would have probably been like the smarter thing for Alicent to do and for her side. but I think that there's still like so much friendship and history there that I knew she wasn't going to do anything and hurt Rhaenyra. Like I really think that she wanted to hear her out. I think, you know, she was super startled at first and was like, oh shit, this, you know, she could kill me. But then, you know, she even says to her, like, okay, so you would kill me and kill the guards, and then they would kill you, and then what? You know, and she's kind of like, oh, I didn't think that far ahead. But yeah, she I think she was always going to hear her out.
Also kind of goes back to the rat catchers. It's like, yo, Aegon was on that throne drunk as fuck, no one around, like clearly no one was guarding any of the royalty. Like, you know what I mean, they could have ended it there too, but that's not how George does things.
Yeah.
There are like the show makes me ask like a lot of weird questions. Like I just thought of this now. So okay, there was that little bodyguard that Rhaenyra brought with her, right? Like that dude that was
Yeah.
kind of chilling for a little bit and walked with her. So that's a long, like a decent journey. So those two, what, like spent weeks on the road? Did they bond? Did they get to know each other? Like, what do they talk about all the time? Like, so what do you do? Like, that's a long time to have a companion that you're traveling on the road together. Like, it's not like they just appear there. Like,
Yeah.
so I really wonder, like, did they form a friendship?
I'm sure they had to. They both have winning personalities. That guy, I mean, I don't remember ever, granted he was in costume as a Septon, but like I don't remember seeing that guy ever in the meetings or
Oh,
something. Like I've
No
never seen that
idea
guy
who that
before.
is. What his name is, I don't know.
and that's a pretty important job he had.
Yeah, he just sat on the steps pretending to read a book and yeah. But I'll say that in TV shows and movies, it's a major pet peeve for me when things are just so easily could have been explained and they just don't get explained the right way, or it's a miscommunication or something like that. I just hate where like huge problems happen because of some dumb like piece of dialogue or something. So when watching this, we already knew about the misunderstanding last season when Viserys was dying, but when this conversation was happening and and Allison's like, no. I talked to him. I swear on it. He said that he wanted Aegon to be king, and he said it. And she's like, well, what did he say? Did he say my name? And she's like, no, I didn't say your name. So okay, what did he say? And he's like, well, he was talking about Aegon and then the prince that was but like as she's talking this, I'm just thinking like, fucking say it, like please, like talk about Prince was proud, like tell the story, make them be understanding, like, and I was so happy they did because yeah, Calvin was too. Because it just I hate where a conversation it could easily go there, it should go there, and then it doesn't. So I was just really happy this time we actually heard it. We actually saw the look on Allison's face when she realized she's been wrong this entire time. That was satisfying for me watching it because I truly didn't think we were going to get that. I thought it'd be another misunderstanding or another line of dialogue could have brought all this light onto what we're talking about, and it wasn't. So I was happy there.
And I mean, yeah, so that is like props to like House of the Dragon, like letting the viewer in on a lot more than Game of Thrones did. Like, you know what I mean? Because yeah, in Game of Thrones, we would have to already kind of know that is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But to Allison's benefit, which I wouldn't normally do this, hearing Aegon not being a Targaryen, not knowing like, what the heck like he's talking about, like she doesn't know about the Song of Ice and Fire. So I mean, I can see where that came from and her being like, no, like he said my son's name. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't lie. Like, you know what I mean? So like it definitely illuminates both sides and makes me feel a little bit more sympathetic. I definitely think maybe not sympathetic, but it almost like it's like Allison's character to me is like it's written to be like you just feel like it's like just so pathetic. Like, you mean like everything in her life is like a misunderstanding or like she doesn't have like any really free will, like, you know what I mean? And everything she does is like mistake after mistake after mistake, whether it's like her fault or not. And it's like that is such like a sad existence to me. So I mean, I can feel sympathetic in a way, but still, goddamn.
Yeah, again, like I felt bad for both of them. I feel bad for both of them, but both of them had a hand in fucking all of this up, and it's going to lead to the death of millions, maybe, of people. So, including probably both of their families.
And all the dragons.
Yeah.
The dragons.
Yeah. Well, beyond that scene, there's a lot more to talk about in the episode, but let's get into our episode awards, starting with the winner of the episode, or the MVP, the most valuable player of the episode. So, Brad, let's start with you. I'm curious who you've got as the episode for this one.
So I know it's always easy we go with characters or performers, but I really went like the set design for this episode. Like everything looked awesome. Like Harrenhal looked awesome. The shot of like when like Damon shows up on Cadillacs, like that looks sick. You know, like Cadillacs, Carlac,
Parallax.
Carmax.
This before we recorded.
Carlax, Carlax the dragon. His
That's
trusted advisor and friend. Cadillacs. It's Cadillacs.
You got it,
Brad,
buddy.
did you just take a shit recently and you needed like some Miralax and you're just like getting things confused?
That dragon looks sick with the rain coming down,
It
and
did,
then there was
it
like a
did.
couple of wide shots of like the Red Keep. Like everything just looked really good in this episode. Like I
Yeah.
thought, like the lighting, like when Damon's like creeping in, like the lighting was really good. It wasn't too dark that you couldn't see anything. I just thought
agree.
like, the crew did a really good job on this episode of like visually how everything like looks. So I wanted to give props to them this episode.
And for anyone who doesn't know who Parallax is, it's Therax, Damon's dragon. Is
Correct.
Paraxes. God damn it.
I don't feel good. I have a.
Oh, here we
who's-
go.
Yeah, you're sick.
sick?
Yeah. Yeah,
Xerax
you're
is
sick.
who's that? Nobody.
That's Rhaenyra's dragon.
Rhaenyra's okay.
Cyrax.
Well, I
yeah.
was close.
You were closer than Brad for sure. Okay,
I'm all talking shit about Brad and I still get it wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you though, Brad. And I think like, with Harrenhal, it's known as this haunted castle and there's stories and ghosts apparently in there and all that. I think they really did a good job of showing as he's kind of making his way through there and it's pouring, just kind of emphasizing these things and the bats flying. I thought they did a really nice job there. Kelsey, who do you got as MVP?
I didn't really have like an MVP this episode, so I guess I'll say that the MVP is what like was confirmed that we were talking about in the group chat. It's me for calling three of those dragon eggs were Daenerys's eggs. I never get anything right when I'm predicting things here, and that was just I was like, oh, maybe. So I'd say those eggs. I say those 3 eggs that survive and allow Daenerys to be a badass.
It's not the 3 eggs. It's you, Kelsey. You're the MVP. We'll give you your flowers. You were totally right about that. As soon as I saw the news, I was like, "Oh shit, we're gonna have to give her props for getting that one right." But yes, you're exactly right.
You knew it was coming.
3 of those 4 dragon eggs that we saw that go with Rhaena across the narrow sea are the 3 eggs that turn into Daenerys' dragons, which Kelsey guessed.
Yeah,
So,
but otherwise,
yeah.
I don't have any winners here because I think we just know what's coming, and it's just like, oh, I think everyone's good. It's kind of like a loser. Like it's going to be like the LVPs because it's like we just know what's coming.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Caterade, what do you think about it? Was that hard for you to pick an MVP this week?
Yeah, it was weird because as I was saying, like before we started recording, like so much happened in this episode. Like there's a lot of scenes and a lot of like people mentioned and a lot of throwbacks to Game of Thrones, which was really cool. But I don't feel like there was a strong, like valuable player of people that really like won the episode. But I will say for this week, I did Rhaenys as my MVP. Just because she has always been, but in this episode especially, very like measured, very wise, and she just seems like really smart, and she has like really good things to say. Like she's the one that kind of told Rhaenyra to go talk to Allison, and she has these like quotes that are really good. I think like something about like we don't even know what we're fighting for at this point. And then she also says like warns her about bringing in the dragons, like that's going to bring it to a whole nother level of war, like we really want to avoid that. So I don't know, she just seems like kind of a badass this whole time, but like very underrated, very low-key.
Yeah, she's understated too. I totally agree with you. She really is. I mean, question for you, why is she not the hand of the queen? Like Rhaenyra doesn't have a Hand of the Queen yet, right? Why is it not her? Because every scene where everyone is urging her to go to war, to do this, things that are bad ideas or that she doesn't want to do, every time they show her look to Rhaenys, and Rhaenys has that stone face look on her face all the time. But she's always offering great quotes, like you're saying in this one. She said, "We teeter now at the point where none of it will matter, and the desire to kill and burn takes hold, and reason is forgotten." Like that shit is real. She knew that Otto wouldn't have signed off on that parent trap plot, so she knew that probably he was gone. Um, at one point, all the whole small council was like saying, "Maybe you should leave. We'll rule in your," like saying all this nonsense, and she just checks all of them. She's like, "I'll remind you that Rhaenyra is wearing the crown of the conciliator, the wisest of the kings, who had the longest reign out of all of them." And then beyond that, Rhaenys and her husband Corlys continue to have by far the healthiest relationship of anyone on the show, and maybe anyone in Game of Thrones too. Like they have by far the healthiest relationship. So I totally agree with you. Rhaenys is dope.
Love it. Who's yours?
I mean, I agree with you guys. It was hard. I have a few names of just people that like could be in consideration, but I'm not married to any of them. I said that Bela could be because she's important. She rides her dragon, does the reconnaissance, caught Criston Cole, and so brought that news back. So she's providing valuable intel for the Black team. The White Worm Mysaria could be an MVP because she is being valued. She's providing really good information, and she was promoted to be on Rhaenyra's council, which I think is pretty cool because she's kind of like the opposite of Larys, or like Larys is now the master of whispers for the green side. Now she's kind of the spy master on the black side. So I think that's cool. And lastly is my guy King Aegon, because I know, and this is a more of like a in real life thing, I respect that he promoted all of his boys to be on the Kingsguard. It was a terrible move strategically, but like for me, if I have a job, I just want to be around my friends all the time. So if I have to do some bullshit I don't want to do or whatever, like bring all my friends to be around me for when it happens. So I respect that, and I like the move that he made.
Noah's the King Aegon of our group.
Oh, I like him. Well, he kind of took a step back again in this one, in this episode, but yeah, he's cool. I'm down with King Aegon.
You know what, Noah? I will say, like, for the White Worm, like, it's also confirmed in this episode that she did go back and warn some. So I would agree. I think she was definitely an MVP contender for sure.
That's a great point. Yeah, we talked about that and debated a little bit last episode. We weren't really sure. They didn't show her, warning anybody, but yeah, it was nice that they confirmed that this episode for sure. Well, going with Aegon, who I have as an MVP for a dumb reason that I just described, but he could definitely be called an LVP as well. Let's transition to the loser of the episode, or the least valuable player. Kelsey, staying with you, who do you have for an LVP?
I mean, I already kind of hinted at it. It's Alicent. She's really the whole reason. And I know it's not totally her fault, but that last scene just really drives it home that like she really fucked up. Like she should have had this conversation with Rhaenyra. Like they should have had this conversation privately. Like, you know what I mean? Being like, this is what your dad said. Because if they, like, you know what I mean? Like, if they would have had this conversation 30 years ago, and then Rhaenyra could be like, yo, this is the Song of Ice and Fire. She's talking about Aegon the Conqueror. Like, this is a whole, like, thing that we have. Like, that's the same conversation I had with my dad, blah, blah, blah. Like, all of this could have been avoided. So I have her as the LVP because she's not the only person to blame, but she really is kind of like that match that lights the fire.
Yeah, no, you got it. That was good. That was good. You just made me think of, and it's not Alicent necessarily, but that scene last season when Daemon chokes Rhaenyra, and it was just like a crazy scene, and we didn't like it, and didn't really make much sense. But the one thing that Rhaenyra chooses to kind of dig at Daemon with is when she's like, "Oh wait, you love your brother, but he didn't tell you about the Song of Ice and Fire." I mean, like, he doesn't even know what she's talking about. It's like the stupidest thing. Anyway, yeah, they should have had this conversation a long time ago. Alicent could definitely be an LVP. Kate, what do you think?
Well, I agree with that. Still hate Alicent, still hate Criston Cole, but you know what? I'm tired of talking about them. They suck. So my LVP is us, the viewers, for having to see Aemond naked.
That was full frontal.
It was full frontal.
At first, like when he got up and you just see like the little like ball outline like under his butt, I was like, okay. Ooh. And then he turns around and he's just like, ooh,
The ball outline.
yeah, in between like his butt cheek, like you see like, and I was like, oh God, no one wants to see that. Then he turns around and his dick is all hard and it's everywhere in bush. And
No, he didn't have a.
was it not hard?
We can't talk about this anymore. I'm sorry for bringing it up. I'm sorry, everyone.
I hate all of you.
I'm
Dude.
sorry.
That's your boy, Brad. I thought you'd be proud of him.
Oh my God.
Here's my question. I mentioned this to Kate when we were watching. So, okay.
I'm so
you go in your
uncomfortable.
he had his little VIP room, right? He was in there with her in his room, in their little room.
Yes.
Why would so is there a locker room? Because he left butt naked. Was he going back to the locker room to get his clothes? Why wouldn't his clothes be in that room?
Yeah, it was weird how he just walked away butt naked.
So I'm
He
like,
has
is he
to-
going
Where was he
back to
going?
the locker room to gather his things, or were his clothes back in there and he realized it a few steps out and was like, shit, that was kind of badass how I walked out of there. Now I just have to go home like this because I don't want to have to walk back in there and be like, sorry, forgot my things.
As
You know,
like his
he
boy's
just
getting
rolled
his
home.
dick wet. So like, sorry guys, like it like grabs his like things.
I won't be but a minute.
but exactly what you just said though, when the part again, Aegon has really like risen in my ranks over this season compared to last season. But this one, when he's all drunk and he's showing up there with his boys, and he's like telling that one guy, like, "Oh, this is the best place to get it wet," and then, like, which we already heard last season, and it's like, dude, that is so bizarre and creepy and all of that. But yeah, Aemond, he's so emaciated, gross, still fully butt naked, but hairless. His whole body was hairless, which I thought was even weirder because he has that long hair. Yeah, that was uncomfortable.
Well,
for sure.
maybe you just can't see it. It's so white, like it just blends in with his body.
You know, I wasn't like binoculars looking there, but
I was like
pause
2
it.
inches away from.
Oh, all right, Brad, who you
We
got for
lost.
LVP?
We all lost.
There's one clear LVP. All of you guys got it wrong. There's one clear LVP. It's Damon for being the rudest super guest of all time. He was so rude at supper. Like, threw his spoon. You're trying to poison me. Like, what are you doing? He went in there like he punched the dude. Like, I thought you were going in there trying to like curry favor. Like, he was being such a little baby. He wouldn't eat his deer. They prepared him. They don't have much in there. They prepared him a deer and he threw his spoon and was like, this is poison. Like, why not be like, I want to see you eat it? He was just rude. Kind of like Parker's being right now. Just a rude supper guest.
Well, she says you better call me your grace. It's not
Yeah.
princess.
Prince.
Mhm. Which was like another weird, and it just confirmed everything that Rhaenyra said in the last episode, where she was like, "You think that like I took this from you or whatever, but this is like my rightful like place. Like my dad didn't believe in you, didn't trust you, blah blah blah." And yeah, he's going around Harrenhal talking to the 5 people that aren't ghosts there apparently, and like didn't get burned up by Larys Clubfoot or whatever he called it. Sir Clubfoot. You know what? Actually, so I think that guy was like an MVP too. Like he
I was
was
just
Oh
gonna
yeah,
say
he
that.
was dope.
I was just gonna say that. That guy was awesome. We're like, what's his name?
I was
Damon.
laughing
Damon
so
busts
much.
in there. He's like, I'm claiming Harrenhal. And like I was like,
It's like,
yeah, apparently so. You want to sit down and eat something? Like he did
It's
not
like,
care at all.
He was awesome.
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, you do. Good job. Wow. Good job. Your
Larys Clubfoot is no lord of mine. He's a scourge upon this castle and this family. He's like, okay,
Oh,
cool,
yeah.
man. Yeah, that guy was dope.
I was seriously sitting there laughing for like 3 minutes when he said Larry's Clubfoot. I was like, damn.
Yeah, I was like, cook him.
That's
He's
his
cooked.
kid.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, that going into the cringe moment of the episode, we've already the big one for me was the Aemond full frontal, which was just unnecessary, I thought, and King Aegon saying "get it wet." I also had the baby Jaehaerys, which we'll talk about that scene in a second, but him getting the head sewn on, I thought that was a cringe moment for me as well. Did you guys have anything else?
I put bad haircuts. You guys didn't notice like the new do on Cole
Crispy.
has like a bowl cut and Larry's got like a perm. He's like curly hair. I'm like, it's kind of like in wrestling when someone's about to go heel and they give them like a haircut that just kind of pisses you off even more. And you're like, I already didn't like this guy. And now I hate him more because they gave him a stupid haircut. I felt like that's what they were doing with all the people we already don't like.
Yeah, it's like I hate the physical, I hate the embodiment of this person. I hate what they do. I hate what they say. I hate their actions. But now with this dumbass haircut, I hate the physical of this person as well. Yeah, that his like Caesar haircut was so stupid. I'm saying I was happy though that Allison's starting to get the ick from your boy Ser Criston,
Oh
which
yeah,
happened a couple of times this episode. I mean, whether it was a haircut, him being corny and asking for her favor, his new bling of like the hand around it. Yeah, that whatever. But I think Allison's getting the ick from your boy.
She gave him her handkerchief though.
She did the hanky.
like, she was,
she
like,
kind of just looked at him. She was like,
Yeah, she wasn't-
say anything.
She wasn't happy about it.
Yeah, that was really cringy. Definitely gives him his Sir Insolot name. It wasn't cringy so much as just sad, because we were talking about how sad last week's episode was with Eric and Arik. Like, it was exactly what we said, that they were just going to be like buried. No one's really going to care. Like, Rhaenyra was there, and like I think like Jacaerys was there with her, and that's it. And that's exactly what we said. It's like, you know, these two people are so loyal and sacrifice so much, and that is exactly what, like, we were talking about, that's exactly what like Aemon's girl was talking about, like, you know, in the whorehouse. And like, you know, it's like, it's the commoners, and it's like the people that sacrifice so much that are really the ones punished, and now they're just going to be like in a pauper's grave basically.
Yeah.
After doing one of the hardest things that you can ever imagine, like killing the person that you love the most. For what?
We talked about it a lot last episode, but I think that the one thing that this season of this show does beautifully and better than last season and better than Game of Thrones has done is really just showing it from the perspective of the small folk and the countrymen and the people that are not connected to these great families and these great houses. And they keep doubling back on that, which I think they're just doing a really nice job of telling that story and seeing what the effect, and like the war again hasn't even really started yet. But you see what's happening between that battle scene, which opened the episode, and all those dead bodies, and going straight from that into the grave where Sir Eric and Sir Eric laid. And it just, yeah, it showed that they were sad. Rhaenyra was sad that he died, but like no one gives a shit about them. And they came from a lesser known house. They worked their entire, like, the pinnacle of their career was being named to the Kingsguard, and they both died over some bullshit, and they're going to be forgotten just as quickly.
Yeah, they got buried, and then they were like, "Hey, we need to go have a meeting."
You know, like, all right, yeah, let's go talk about something else and forget about this entirely. Yeah. Any other cringes before we get into just other notes and things from the episode?
Nope.
Okay. Well, a couple things. First off, going back to the dragons that we talked about that Kelsey so accurately predicted. Yes, 3 of them belong to Daenerys, but I really like this kind of reveal because they explain that Rhaena is now taking these dragon eggs. They're going and dropping off Joffrey, the little kid, at the Vale, and then going to Essos to hide and kind of make sure that everything is safe. But it explains why those eggs are in Essos, and how Illyrio, who ends up with them and gives them as a gift to Daenerys, how he got them, because he lives in Essos. He doesn't come to Westeros. So it kind of just fills in that gap a little bit of how they got across the Narrow Sea, which I thought was pretty cool. Another big moment that happened in this episode was it was the scene that had the cameo of young Rhaenyra. And I really want to get your take on a lot of this. I thought that it was awesome. I just was really happy to see her. I thought she did such a great job early in the season last season. But yeah, she's sitting there, and all she says to Daemon, it really just kind of checks him. She goes, "Always coming and going, aren't you? And I have to clean up afterwards." And just, this is happening when Daemon's head's fucked up. He just got in a big fight with his wife, and who is the queen, and he doesn't really know what's going on. And he sees Rhaenyra represented by the younger version of herself. So my question to you guys is, why do you think that in this vision, which obviously he can't control, why did she appear as the younger version of herself?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a lot to say about that. You threw me off with the question at the end because I would like, I don't know. Maybe that's who he had the best bond with. Maybe that's the last time he really felt like a kinship with her versus who she is now. Maybe that was the last time he wasn't threatened by her and didn't feel like, maybe that was the last time he didn't feel like, oh, she's going to end up on the throne and it's not going to be me. So that was the last time he had a genuine relationship with her in their lives.
I
I
feel
think-
like, oh, sorry.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say, I totally agree with that, Brad, and I feel like he really needs to be seen as like a protector and like, that strong model, like you mean, like, it's like that's like his gift, and like that's probably when he felt like he was protecting her the most. Like, you see it when like he has the dragon come down, and he's like defending her name. Like, I can't remember that exact scene, but like, remember they're all on the wall, and I think he's like, it's against Otto, right? Like Otto's there and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so I think maybe he's remembering like the little girl that like he was meant to protect, and like, obviously, yeah, they had that really strong bond. And that's probably when she was like at her most frail and weakest, and he's really having his subconscious like is finally bubbling up, and we're actually seeing that he has one, like, he has a conscience. And he's being like, man, I've like really been fucking Rhaenyra over, and he's like feeling clearly guilty about the baby, as well as like, what he's been doing to her. I mean, I don't know. And also too, I mean, like you were mentioning, Noah, this place is like magical and haunted and all these different things. So maybe it's just a part of like, because that one vision too was like, you're gonna die here. Maybe it's just all of these things bubbling up, like right before you die. A lot of times they say like some of your biggest regrets, like you might flash before you or something like that. I don't know. Maybe just more foreshadowing stuff.
I like both of the points you gave, and I put a lot of thought in this just because I was really thinking like it just this was a very obvious. I mean, to bring an actress back that wasn't going to be in the season to be in this one scene and say one line, like this was a very major decision that they made, and so I was just trying to think why. And so I had three kind of things that I was thinking, and you kind of hit on a lot of it. But the first one was because of power. Like the younger Rhaenyra is kind of the idealized version of Rhaenyra for Daemon, and like because she would still look up to him, like he still held power over her. But even for this one now, this version that he held power over, to question him, I think speaks loudly too. Another one was guilt, which is kind of what Kelsey hit on, where like he effectively, between manipulating her and all the things that he did to her when she was younger, like he kind of killed her youth, and I think he feels badly about all that. And the other one, which I think makes sense too, is that he kind of still views her as a child and doesn't view her as his equal or as the queen, and it's why he couldn't answer when she asked him last episode, you accept me as your ruler and your queen, and he didn't say anything. And so I think that all of that, I could see all of those a little bit, but I think that it was really interesting to me that it was that version of her in the vision, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though, especially like the end where he still kind of sees her as a young girl. That makes a lot of sense.
And Kelsey, you mentioned it that the prophecy told him that he'll die in this place. Who was that? I didn't catch that. Who was the woman that said that?
No.
So do you remember like when so I don't know if she's a real person or not, but remember when he first gets there and he's like looking all around and you see the woman, like everyone bows down, like everyone goes on their knee because he's like, I'm claiming Harrenhal, blah blah blah. So then everyone goes on their knee because they're like, well, we don't want any trouble, sir. And then I'm pretty sure it's the lady that comes in and she's just like staring at him.
It is.
So
Yeah.
I
It
didn't
is,
know.
but like,
I didn't notice
who
that.
is she?
Oh, well, I don't know who she is. Like, and I don't know if she's real or not, or if she's just, because if everyone's like kneeling and stuff, like they probably didn't see. Did they look at her?
Right.
Like,
No,
did
it
anyone
was like
acknowledge her
Sixth
coming in?
Sense. Like no one else saw her but Damon kind of thing. It might have
I
been.
don't know.
I didn't
Yeah,
even
so
notice
maybe
her in
she's
that scene, so
something.
that's a good call.
Well, and then also to that tree, was there any significance with that tree?
Yeah, it was like the God's Wood, where it's like, the old
Okay,
gods
that's,
pray to, or they,
but it's not like that specific tree. It's just like that type of tree.
well, like a lot of like the main castles like all have a god's wood where you can go to pray if you
Oh,
believe in the old gods, and so like that was the god's wood of Harrenhal.
okay. It would be interesting though. I think that's probably something that maybe like we should try to research of like, or maybe will be revealed in the next episode of like who she is, because obviously she's playing like some kind of
She's
role.
got to come back. It's got to be a thing.
Yeah, they have to explain
Maybe
that.
you think she's like a brand type thing or like, warg type thing?
I mean, maybe because I don't really know where that vision. I mean, we know where the vision started. It's when he thought that someone was coming at the door with the swords, and then he was in with Rhaenyra, and then he was in the Godswood. But I don't know if like he snapped out of his vision and he was there in the Godswood, and that wasn't a vision anymore, or if that was still part of the vision. I don't really know.
Yeah, it was hard to tell.
Yeah.
She's probably like a gas leak somewhere. He's just hallucinating.
Maybe. What else? So we've
I
got.
thought it was really smart though. I thought it was a good way to like relay information to the audience because Damon obviously he was never gonna talk about his feelings. Yeah, man, I kind of feel bad about what happened. Like, so it was a good way to reveal to the audience, like, look, he does have some remorse. He is feeling a certain way because like he was never gonna express that verbally to anybody. So I think going to Harrenhal gave them a good excuse to like, weird stuff goes on here. You kind of see things, it messes with you. So I just think it was a good way to reveal that to the audience and let us know, like, okay, he's not a total asshole about everything.
I agree with that.
I wanted to talk about another scene, or at least like, the things that have like kind of led up to it of I guess it could be argued as like another MVP too, Laris Clubfoot being named the official like, Master of Whispers, like you guys said. Like he has put everything, like everyone else is playing checkers or whatever. I don't even know if they're playing checkers. What's less than checkers? Like what's that? But like he's tic-tac-toe, yeah. Everyone's playing tic-tac-toe, and he's like playing chess out here. Like he has perfectly put everything into place for him to be doing that, knowing that Aegon's a complete idiot. Like, you know what I mean? That this was gonna happen. And like, he has all these spies, he has everyone under like, he knows everything that's going on in the castle even before maybe other people do, because he's purposely done that. And it's just like, I don't know, like I think there's gonna be even more, like something's coming with that. I'm not sure exactly what, but like what do you think his ultimate goal is? Like getting Sir Crispy out of there? Like
he wants to open up his own brothel of just feet.
More feet. That's the goal.
more feet.
Yeah. I don't know. There were a lot of funny tweets about that scene though, and him specifically, because he was like, yeah, there's a lot of rumors going on, and a lot of them were saying like, oh yeah, Aegon's wise and he's going out with the dragon, but a lot of other people, they're saying he's a bitch. Like, he's like, who's saying that? And he's like,
oh, don't worry about it. And he's obviously probably planting these, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
he's definitely like making it up.
People are so easy. Like, I get it. Like, I get it that it's poking fun at like politicians always have people in their ear and they're gullible. But man, people are really stupid on this show and like Game of Thrones. Like, to not see like, oh, you want power? Like, there should be more people that are like, dude, I know what you're doing, you creepy ass dude. Like, stop. Like, everyone just falls for everyone's BS like so much. Like, hey man, I think you're brave and all, but some people out there are talking, be like, what? They are? And they just get all worked up. It's like, really? Everyone's like this gullible and stupid. Like Laris isn't even trying hard. He's not even like playing a great game, but like it's just working for him.
You know what though? I think they explained it really well in like the after, like where they talk about, what's that called? Like it's when they talk about it. It's called like
I know
Little
it's not,
after
like,
show thing.
yeah, little after show. Like they were saying like how like you're truly seeing just how insecure Aegon is, and like how like it's just like it's compounding in itself because he's realizing more and more that he's really not fit for this job. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And so stuff like that does work on people like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of our politicians are kind of like that too, where it's like they just dig in and yeah, they just come up with like crazy plans, and they know that like people like the little people or whatever are going to follow. I mean, we're literally living in that right now where it's like there's it's distractions, right?
Yeah.
Do you think any part of him would fight like because I was about to make a comment and then I realized like, oh, maybe not. I'm like, I was gonna say I like the juxtaposition of like at least he is like kind of ready to go out and battle, and you juxtapose that with like Joffrey, who during like the Battle of Blackwater was like hiding in the castle, and Tyrion's like, "Yo, you need to go out there," and he's like, "No, I'm waiting for my time." Like, so I kind of thought it was cool on the one hand that like Aegon's like, "Yo, I'm gonna go out there," but then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, "Well, yeah, it's easy for him. He has a dragon. Like, he's not really putting himself in harm's way in his mind, like." Especially during a battle with no scorpions, like to shoot up at dragons. If you're riding a dragon, in a battle, you have a very, very high likelihood of like leaving that battle like unscathed. So, like, do you guys think he
Well, in a
really
battle
has
that's
any?
not going against with other dragons, though. When you're going against other dragons, like that's where it's all of a sudden.
Sure. So do you guys think is any boldness to him at least? I mean, granted it's stupid, like, but do you at least feel like, okay, at least he's willing to go out there and like do something versus Joffrey? Or are you like, well, no, he's just willing to do that because he has a dragon to ride on?
I
I
don't think
think,
that's
oh,
either.
sorry.
I don't think it's either of those things. I think it's that he's just, I mean, he's willing to do it, which I guess is respectful or respectable, but it's a stupid decision. Like everyone's saying it's a stupid,
Sure.
and yet his boys who are the Kingsguard are like hyping him out, like, bro, you're gonna fucking kill all of them. You're gonna look so good in the armor of the Conqueror, bro. It's gonna be so like in this, it was definitely manipulating what Laris Clubfoot did, but Larry, like he guided him to the right decision, which is like you should not
Yeah.
go do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
he
it
just
goes.
wants to like kill people. Like
Yeah.
that's not
He wants revenge. He's not thinking. He's not thinking far enough ahead.
Mhm. And I think it goes hand in hand with like the most insecure people also ironically have like the most inflated ego, and he can't stand, like, everyone always talks about how Aemond like, has the biggest dragon and he's the best fighter and like all this stuff. So I think he's just really like, he's like a narcissist too. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, no, like fuck that. Like, I'm gonna prove it, blah blah. I'm gonna use my dragon. So I think it goes like, I think in addition to all of that, like that you're saying, I think it just goes hand in hand with him being extremely insecure and falling upwards as, or like, well, accidentally being being named to the heir to the throne.
I mean, he says in this one, he's like, "I'm as fierce as any of them." It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, my
and
guy.
everybody was like, okay.
I'm glad
Silence.
Kelsey brought up Aemon too, because because he's the best character on the show, clearly. But B, like that to me is the most interesting like relationship on the show is like the two brothers. And like you guys think at one point any of them has the other killed? I don't know if they're ever gonna fight and physically kill the other, but do you think like Aemon would ever like get Aegon killed if it were up to him and he could do it and not get caught? Or does Aegon at some point become so insecure about Aemon because everyone's like, yo, he's a badass, look at all he's doing, and that like it's just very interesting to watch like them push each other's buttons.
I don't think Aegon would ever do anything to Aemond because I think Aegon is so like Aemond, like I very much dislike Aemond. I really hate him. When you say he's the best character, I think that's insane. But he has some complexity to his character, and like you see that in his vulnerability that we saw last week and this week. He's curled up in a ball, a fetal position, like the way his body looks. And you just saw when Aegon just busts in there like a bull in a china shop, and he's so unaware that anything is going on with Aemon, like that Aemon has any kind of issues. He doesn't know any of that. And yet Aemon, you think like I could see Aemon just like he's a psycho, just snapping, and all of a sudden like he might want to do something that goes against his brother.
You don't think it takes one whisper from Larys? If Larys ever feels threatened by Aemon, and if Larys is like, yo, Aemon's keeping me from being like Hand of the King, all I have to do is whisper to Aegon, like, hey, some people are saying he's like more badass than you, like, and then like Aegon, like, whatever, like has him sent to the wall or something. Like, don't you think like Aegon's insecurity could be played on of like, your brother is way more of a badass. People respect him more of a fighter. Like, is Aegon more loyal to family or to his maintaining his position?
I don't even know if he even thinks that far. You know what I mean? Like that was Otto's job. Like I don't even like, I think like what Noah was saying is like, I think he's so unaware and like, I don't know. And two, like, I mean, technically, I mean, they have another son. They have a younger, right? Or is
Aaron.
yeah, so they have like another who then getting rid of Aemon doesn't really do anything. He's not next in line to the throne. You know what I mean? You'd have to kill like another baby. If
Yeah, not so much the next in line for the throne, it's just much as like, yo, people respect him more than you. And
but he's kind of
Aegon
heard
being like,
that.
I'll humiliate him in front of everybody so everyone sees I'm the bigger, badder one.
Well, I mean, he's definitely insecure and self-conscious, and that's why he lashes out. And I mean, you were just saying this, that they were talking about it on the post episode, but I don't know. I mean, anything can happen, right? Like Laris is crazy. I can see either way, but I think that Aemond turning on Aegon is far more likely than the other way.
Agreed.
It's just interesting. That to me is like one of the most interesting relationships on that show that like isn't like in your face as much as like Damon and Rhaenyra. Like, you know, there's certain like Rhaenyra and like Alicent. There are certain relationships you're supposed to be like watching and being like, oh man, this dynamic is like kind of interesting. To me, like those two brothers, just because I don't know what's gonna happen with them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I hear ya.
Definitely a watch out.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have anything else for this episode before we move into what to watch for future episodes? Okay, well, there's a couple that I got. The main one is about the character that we saw last episode, but we really meet for sure this episode, whose name is Ulf, which just sounds like a caveman or something. I don't know. Ulf. But the fact that he introduces us to what are called dragon seeds, which are basically bastard-born children of, in this case, the Targaryens, right? So he's half Targaryen. He says that he's the grandson of Jaehaerys, the Conciliator, who we hear about earlier in the episode, the son of Balon the Brave, and the bastard brother to Viserys and Daemon. So in the beginning, I thought this dude, the way he's talking, he just sounds like he's bullshitting. But I thought that immediately when he's bullshitting about that, and then Aegon walks in there and interrupts them, I thought, oh, Aegon's going to overhear this and kill him, and that's just going to be the scene. The fact that it didn't go that way leads me to believe, oh yeah, this guy's definitely coming back, and he will be a thing, so he probably is not bullshitting. But the concept of dragon seeds in general just like really interests me, because then I'm thinking about the scene where Rhaenyra is talking to Mysaria, the White Worm, and Sea Smoke, the dragon's flying around. She's like, yeah, he's been acting crazy recently. And she's like, oh, maybe he's lonely, which to me just screams, oh, well, he's not going to be lonely for long. Someone's going to be riding him. And then who's going to be riding him? So the fact that the concept of dragon seeds are now established, dragons exist that don't have riders, like, to me, just seems like those fit very well together.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally
riding a dragon ever. I want to see that Steve Bannon looking dude riding a dragon ever.
What? He did not look like Steve.
He was
A little bit.
Yeah, he's not in great. He doesn't strike me. I don't know how to put this. Most dragon riders don't look like him.
Okay.
I mean, I agree. I like how they're like, bro, you don't look anything like Daemon and Viserys.
Yeah.
And the response was, how do you know what they look like? And everyone's like, yeah, that's true. They're like,
they're like, okay. Yeah. I totally thought he was like scamming that guy.
It did seem like the way he was talking
around.
like
yeah. And the way that his friends were like, yeah, don't you see his like yellow hair or whatever?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the way that they put it in there, it's got to be more meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. We also have who we met this episode, Alicent's brother, Gwaine Hightower, who at first he was kind of like a foil to Criston Cole, and he was kind of like not talking shit, but like a little bit like belittling him, and the looks he was giving Alicent when he was talking about that. I was like, oh, this guy's going to be cool because he hates on Criston Cole, and I approve of that. But then Criston Cole kind of saves his ass later, so I don't know if he's going to be like indebted to him, or if he still is going to be like, I don't know if Alicent maybe is now spying on the things that Criston Cole's doing out in the field, and this guy is like the eyes and ears for Alicent. I don't know, but I'm curious to see what role he is to play as it moves forward.
Yeah, me too. I liked him. I liked the digs that he was throwing at Criston.
Yeah.
I will say it was interesting too, like when Bela came back saying that, like, oh, she's like, are you sure it was Criston? She's like, from that high? And she's like, yeah, I wasn't that high. I was like right behind them. I almost got them. Like, you know what I mean? And then I think the whole council kind of was like, like with Rhaenyra's reaction was like, like, you know what I mean? Like it kind of raised some flags about her, like not being just like, yeah, absolutely go after Kristen Cole. She was like very like hesitant. Like, I don't know. I thought I sensed some like people being like, what's going on here?
So the four of us were talking after last episode, and when we put a little meme on the Superhero Faces social media accounts, talking about how this whole like beef that Kristen Cole has with Rhaenyra is like all in his head. It's been like 20 years. She doesn't even know that he's this mad at her and he hates her dead. He's always talking shit about her. He always like calling her a bitch, calling her a whore, all these things. Like he wants her to die so bad and she's just completely unaware of this. And so that's been a joke here. It would have been very funny if Bela was like, "Oh yeah, I saw them. I almost got them. It was Kristen Cole." And she's like, "Who?"
Oh my
What?
God.
That would have been
I
really
wish.
funny.
She's like, what the hell is a Kristen Cole?
I knew a guy that I think that his name was similar to that back in the day. I don't know.
Oh my God.
She's like,
I
oh, that
thought he
reminds
was-
me, we need more coal for the fire. Okay.
I thought he was gonna get got. I was so sad.
There's so many times where they just say Dracarys like a half a second earlier and like, you'll be good. And I was also thinking like, burn that fucking forest down, bro.
That's what I was thinking too. Is like, do
Who
a little
gives a
circle
shit?
around there.
Burn that forest down and kill them.
She cares about the environment.
Yeah, she's yeah. It was Earth Day when she did that. Well, the next episode 4, is going to be called A Dance of Dragons, I want to say, and that at least is hyped up to be the biggest battle or one of the biggest battles of the season, and the biggest battle we see so far in House of the Dragon, to rival maybe the Battle of Bastards, something like that. So I'm really, really excited to see that. A little nervous to see that. Do you guys have any predictions now, not knowing anything, not having read the books, of any main characters that you are willing to go out on a limb right now and predict and say that they will not make it through next episode?
I say Cole.
Kristen Cole?
Yeah, just for
Yeah,
the
you
same
said
argument
that
I was making
last
last
week.
week. I feel like characters kind of plateaued and it's kind of boring at the like. I don't know what more they could really do with him, like character wise. And I think he's a major enough character that would make people be like, "Oh, damn." But like everyone else still has like a lot they could do with. But I mean, then again, it is a Game of Thrones show. They killed off a lot of people that like they could have done a lot with. So that's what makes it great. Is like I really don't have any idea, but my guess would be Cole.
Yeah, I remember in Game of Thrones watching that, and in the first season, by the end of the first season, you want Joffrey dead so bad. You're like, kill this fucking guy. He makes it through season 2, and you're like, kill this guy. Makes it through season 3, and then it's finally season 4 before he actually gets killed. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kristen Cole is the last one survived out of all these assholes.
Him and Clubfoot just sail off to the 7 seas together.
Right. Well, any
Go
other?
sell cinnamon and oranges together.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna say maybe Corliss, just because of the conversation that him and Rhaenys had about his heir. So maybe that's some foreshadowing there.
What about you, Kelsey? You got anybody?
That's a good call. I've been thinking one of Damon's kids, just because like of the conversations that Rhaenyra's been having and like sending them off and like stuff like that.
Like the
I don't know
babies?
why. I think huh?
Babies or the girls?
No, the girls.
Oh, so probably Bela since Rhaena's gone.
Yeah, I was even like, oh, those stupid like big old arrow things. I was even like a little worried about her when she was like getting really low, thinking I didn't know exactly where like the rest of the army was. Like, so it's like if she's there and they're in the force, she might think that they're just clearly she only thought they were scouts. She doesn't know that there's like a whole army with them, you know?
Yeah. True.
What about you, Noah? Who do you think is going to get got?
Honestly, I have no idea, but I'm gonna say Damon. I'm gonna say Damon. He's off doing his own thing. It's fitting. A lot of times relationships in this show, like they don't get the closure that we hope they get, the final conversation before one of them goes off and dies heroically. Like I can see that fight between Rhaenyra and Daemon that happened a couple episodes ago being the last interaction they have, and with the prophecy that happened this one saying he'll die here. It just like that makes sense to me if Daemon dies next episode.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be weird to have that prophecy and then it happens in the very next episode?
Yes.
Like that to me seems like he's gonna leave and come back At some point, he's gonna leave, and at some point have to go back there, and then that's gonna make him be like, shit. I know by going back there, the prophecy said I'm gonna die. Like, do I still want to go back there, or do I kind of fight it? I think, but again, with that show, who knows? Like, maybe they do. Maybe that's what they want me thinking, and then they do just come off, and I'm like, oh damn, this is the way I swore it would have played out. But that's why it would be a little bit weird.
I definitely agree with what you're saying, like from a storytelling standpoint, like what you're saying makes way more sense, but I gotta guess somebody, so that's like that.
You know what though? He's been like, I mean, there's been all this emphasis on Harrenhal, and there's gonna be all these like all this army and like all these people that are gonna support Rhaenyra, or whoever like takes over Harrenhal, like they're gonna be able to support whoever does that, like, you know what I mean? And so he's really just like a sitting duck there. Everyone has been talking about wanting Harrenhal. So
Yeah.
like this big army is going, he's by himself. He just has his one dragon, like, you know what I mean? So he really is just sitting there. And two, I mean, it would be nice. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, or like if it's going to result in one or the other's death, but like I think everyone's been waiting for like the Aemond and Daemon,
The class.
like, you know, face off. Yeah. So maybe that's going to happen there too. And whether it's Daemon or Aemon, or maybe neither, I don't know.
I hope we get it.
I hope so too. I think they've been hinting at it for so long. But if Aemon wins, I'm gonna be very upset.
Oh
But it's
my
kind of
God.
seeming that way.
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hell yeah, that's what you get for being rude at supper.
Yeah, you think those peas are poisoned? Death to you, my man.
He threw his spoon. Like, come on, dude. Just be like, nah, I'm good. I don't really trust this. He just threw his spoon. Like, get out of here.
Well, it's time to wrap up, I think. Do you all have anything else about this episode you want to talk about?
It's the episode that got me most excited for next week's episode.
I agree
Yeah.
with that. And like the fact that you say that, I think this episode was very Game of Thrones-y, because this show so far, with all the time jumps in season 1, like there hasn't been as much of a like slow burn, like just character development, like setup, because they've had to move so quickly with all that. And like this one just felt way more like a setup episode in Game of Thrones, where they just pack so much into it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things happening, pieces are moving.
Yeah.
It's not as exciting, but it's setting up the big
Mhm.
thing to come, which will most likely be next episode.
Yep. I'm scared for Dragon
Fine.
Dust.
Yeah, I'm scared as well. But anyway, thank you very much, Brad Parker, who is asleep. We bored her to death. Not to death. Kate and Kelsey, thank you so much. That is going to do it for the Geek and You Shall Find podcast. Once again, we will be back every week watching House of the Dragon, talking about it. Make sure to follow us on all podcasting platforms. Watch us on YouTube, like that bad boy, subscribe to it, and really engage and make sure we know your opinions too, so we can shout you out on the podcast. But thank you all for listening and watching, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Geek and You Shall Find podcast, powered by Superhero Faces. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Superhero Faces, and on Instagram at Superhero_Faces.